can you believe it? Suit twice in a row. Wow, so lucky. Don't think this is going to be a trend though. So, what are we going to talk about today? Today I'm going to talk about, being. So, I was looking into, oh God, I can't even remember what book it was. I shouldn't say looking into. I was reading a book. Can't remember which one, so, sucked in. Where he was talking about the author was talking about being and who you are and stuff like that. And I was like, it was kind of a thought experiment or, a lecture, well, not a lecture, more of an exam that he had to do for his psychology class back when he was in I don't know, doing some uni stuff with psychology and stuff. And what the lecturer did was he had to write a 3 or 4 page report. And the question that they had to answer, everyone in the class had to answer this, was, who are you? And you might have an answer, and they had an answer, or one that they thought they had, in their head. They were like, oh, okay, sweet. But then there was a kind of a restriction put on them where it's pretty smart and actually a really good way to look at it. What the lecturer did was he said, you can't reference anything, you can't reference any labels or identity. You can't say, well, I am a volunteer for St. Vincent de Paul. And you can't say I'm a brother to these people, and you kind of use that to shape who you are, because those are just roles that you facilitate and complete. They're not actually who you are per se. And the other crazy thing is, if they were you, let's say you're a husband or a spouse or whatever. But what happens if you get a divorce? What happens to your sense of being then? Because you were building it up that you were this thing, but apparently now you're not. So what are you? And I recommend doing the exercise itself, asking that question. So getting a piece of paper and writing at the top, who am I? But knowing that you can't put any of those things. You can't say, oh, well, I'm a dog lover, or so on and so forth. I'm a thingy enthusiast. None of that jazz. You gotta just kind of think, drill down to the most universal level to what you are. And I tried this myself, and I spent a good hour looking at that page. And the good thing was I didn't have a time restriction. Them in the class, when he was talking about the story, the author, they had 3 hours to do it. And in the end, I can't come up with an answer that's longer than 2 words. I spent an hour looking at the page, and the only answer I could come up with is I am. I just am. It's difficult to explain what that necessarily means, but I'll try my best. But what it means is with those labels, you're putting limits on yourself. You're putting this I fall into this pigeonholed box, and the reality is, even if you put all of those together, let's say you went down to the utmost detail when it came to those levels. I'm a left-handed, person who also is a brother, who also works as a tax accountant, and I'm an uncle, I'm a nephew. We can keep going, and we can keep adding layer after layer after a layer after layer. We can go, I'm an Australian, or I'm, a white Australian, or I'm a Croatian, a white Australian with Croatian heritage, or, so on and so forth. We can keep on adding an endless, infinite list of labels. But even if we did do that, at the end of all that, we wouldn't actually have a complete idea of who you are. Yeah, that might give us an idea of some of the stuff you do, but not actually who you are. Completely different, So I recommend giving it a shot yourself and seeing how far you can get. If you're like me and you spend a lot of time pondering that question, just in general, and also when you're looking at the damn question yourself and trying to write about it, you might fall into that same answer as me. It's you just am. You're just existing. That's all you really are. You're existing. You kind of are that limitless potential. I know people, grow up and, don't believe that stuff anymore, or say that, that can't be done, or that's not the case, it's not possible. But I think those are just restrictions that people put on each other, or put on themselves and each other. And I think you should kind of get away from that. I think you should avoid, and if you've listened to my, or read any of my blog, you'll kind of see those little ideas that have been, sprinkling in there, that you should kind of get away from these identity labels, because that's what you're doing when you're saying I'm this or I'm that. You're broadcasting an identity, but the added problem with that is your idea of that identity is going to be completely different from the next person and the next person and the next person's idea of that. So let's just take a personal example for me just to illustrate this. Is I'm a biostatistician, so kind of like healthcare researcher, and I can say that I am this thing, but it's more that I do that role because my idea of a biostatistician isn't what other biostatisticians, like biostatisticians, even if you surveyed them, they would all have, they might have similar ideas about what it is, about what that thing is, but because it's just an idea, like the idea, the being a biostatistician is just an idea, it changes from person to person. So you're never going to get a consensus about what's real, but what actually is real is you, and you are, you just am. So I know, saying these, you can probably get, a little bit confused about what is he saying. Watch the video a couple times if you have to, repeat it, go back to the beginning and watch the whole thing again. After a couple times, it will slowly start to make sense to you if it didn't on the first time. But I really want to get you into that mindset where you get out of that idea of pigeonholing yourself in these little labels and these little boxes. So that's all I have to really say for today. And, like and subscribe, and, I'll see you soon. So, stay strapped.